You did everything right. You studied hard. You followed the rules. You were told that if you worked hard enough, showed up early enough, cared deeply enough, the life you were promised would be waiting for you on the other side. And then you got there. And the door was locked. Not because you weren't good enough, not because you didn't try hard enough, but because somewhere between the promise and the arrival, the entire landscape shifted underneath your feet. The house you were supposed to buy cost 3 times what it did for your parents. The job you were supposed to get required 5 years of experience you couldn't have. The stability you were supposed to build kept sliding just out of reach, no matter how fast you moved toward it. And instead of anyone asking what happened, they handed you a label: lazy, entitled. Shout the generation that killed everything. If you're a millennial, you already know this feeling. That strange mix of exhaustion and defiance, of still believing things should be better while quietly wondering if they ever will be. This video is about where that feeling actually comes from, and what it says about you that most people have completely missed. If that already hit close to home, you're going to want to stay for this one. And if this channel is new to you, hit subscribe. We break down the psychology behind the things most people never talk about. Drop a comment below too. I genuinely read every single one. Because what I'm about to walk you through isn't just about economics or generational politics. It's about what happens to the human mind when the story it was handed stops matching the world it actually lives in. And once you understand that, everything about the millennial experience starts to make a different kind of sense. Here's what nobody tells you about millennials. The defining psychological feature of this generation isn't entitlement. It isn't laziness. Psychologists call it cognitive dissonance, the mental friction that happens when 2 things you believe can't both be true at the same time. And millennials didn't just experience a little of it. They were marinated in it from the beginning. You were raised during the peak of the self-esteem movement. Every classroom told you that you were special. Every parent told you that you could be anything. Every trophy, every gold star, every great job just for trying was handed out with genuine love and genuinely good intentions. And you absorbed it. You built your identity around it, around the belief that effort leads to outcome, that the world rewards people who show up and give everything they have. That belief isn't a character flaw. It's a foundation. And for a long time, it held. Then the floor gave way. The research on this is more revealing than most people realize. Psychologist Jean Twenge spent years studying generational shifts in personality and mental health. What she found about millennials wasn't what the headlines suggested. Yes, this generation scores higher on measures of self-focus than previous ones. But here's the part that gets quietly left out of every think piece. They also score significantly higher on anxiety and depression. Not one or the other. Both, at the same time. Think about what that actually means. A generation that was told it was exceptional, now quietly convinced it is failing. That isn't entitlement. That is the psychological signature of a promise that was broken on a generational scale. The Pew Research Center confirmed it plainly. Millennials became the first generation in modern history expected to be financially worse off than their parents. Not because they made worse choices, but because the contract changed while they were already mid-signature. And your nervous system noticed, even if you never had the words for it. Here's where it goes deeper than economics. What millennials experienced wasn't just financial hardship. It was what psychologists call schema disruption, the collapse of a core belief system about how the world works. And when that happens during the years you're still forming your adult identity, it doesn't just disappoint you, it rewires you. You graduated into a recession. You built your career in a gig economy that stripped away the safety nets your parents took for granted. You watched institutions, governments, corporations, universities, repeatedly fail the people who trusted them most. And you learned, slowly and painfully, that the map you were given doesn't match the territory. That lesson leaves a mark. It creates a mind that is simultaneously idealistic and braced for impact, that still believes things should be fair, but no longer expects them to be, that wants to trust, but has been given too many reasons not to. That isn't cynicism. That is pattern recognition. That is a mind that paid attention and updated accordingly. Yeah. And now here is the part most people never say out loud. That same psychological experience, the dissonance, the disruption, the having to rebuild your worldview from scratch, created something quietly remarkable in this generation. Millennials became the first generation to widely destigmatize mental health. To say out loud that anxiety is real, that therapy is not weakness, that struggling doesn't make you broken. That shift didn't happen by accident. It happened because a generation that was forced to sit with psychological pain eventually decided to understand it rather than bury it. Millennials question everything: institutions, authority, the way things have always been done. Not because they're difficult, but because they were educated enough to see the cracks and honest enough to name them. That they job hop not out of disloyalty, but out of hard-won self-preservation in an economy that proved loyalty was never going to be returned. They delay traditional milestones, not because they don't want them, but because they're navigating a system that was never redesigned to help them reach them. The traits the world criticized most in this generation are the exact traits that make the most sense once you understand what they lived through. So here's what you need to hear. You are not too sensitive. You are not too demanding. You are not a failed version of the generation before you. You are a person who was handed a story that turned out to be incomplete, who had to grieve the version of life they were promised, and who somehow kept going anyway, who built something real in conditions that weren't designed for building, yet who learned to hold hope and realism in the same hand without letting either one go. That is not weakness dressed up as a generation. That is resilience that never got properly named. The world spent a decade asking why millennials couldn't just get it together. The better question, the one that actually leads somewhere, is what does it take to keep believing in a future when the present keeps proving you wrong? And the answer, quietly, is exactly what you've been doing all along. Tell me, does this sound like your experience? Drop it in the comments. I want to hear your version of this story. If this hit home for you, please subscribe. There's a lot more of this kind of depth coming. And if you want to go even further, the next video looks at the psychology of people who grew up too fast, and why the weight they carried as children never quite leaves them as adults.